All right, let's see. Can everybody see my slides with me superimposed? Everybody sees that slide
Yeah, looks
and
perfect.
tiny me?
Looks
Okay,
perfect.
good.
Off you go.
Excellent. All right, then let's jump in. You already got a little introduction about me. Hi, I'm Debbie Levitt. You know, you can find me all over the place. And I think the only thing we didn't mention in the introduction was that many of my clients independently have nicknamed me Mary Poppins because I fly in, fix everything, sing a few songs, and fly away to where I might be needed next. So I'm going to also, let you know that you can find me around the internet verse. I don't tweet very much, but you can find me at Delta_CX. You can certainly follow me on LinkedIn. Debbie Levitt looks like this, just more Photoshop. And I go live on YouTube 3 or 4 times a week, and I do live streams on all different topics on UX, CX, dealing with our jobs, getting into the industry, all kinds of stuff. So please follow me and subscribe on YouTube. The channel is called Delta CX. And also, you'll see these little camera icons popping up. This makes a little more sense when I'm in a room full of people because what it means is my slides have stopped animating. That slide has no more changes or animations. And so, for people in my audience who like to take pictures of slides, or if you like to take screenshots, once you see that camera icon, you know that it is. Nothing else is going to happen on this slide, and it's a good time to take that shot. I will also be taking a lot of drinks during the talk. And of course, I have a cup from America, which is the size of my head. Everything's bigger in America, though not necessarily better. So also I've been switching my terms from UX to CX because I believe CX is more understood, more respected, and just a much bigger umbrella for us, and that many people define CX as what we now think of as UX plus service design plus other elements of the brand and the experience. So I think shifting to CX is one thing that could help us in our jobs, but I'm not going to cover that too much here. Just know that I say CX all over the place, and I mean it pretty much interchangeably with UX. So, you know, wherever you worked or worked last or before, you know CX and UX are so often misunderstood, circumvented, belittled, and overruled. And you know what it leads to. I don't have enough time to tell you about how Agile, Scrum, and other methodologies have books, training, and materials that exclude CX and UX. Sometimes they don't even mention us at all. Some of them admit you'll need UX, but suggest that someone on the engineering team just study UX a bit. Get a book. Safe Agile, which is one type of Agile very popular in America, suggests that UX shouldn't be on the Agile team at all because previously they were too siloed. Yes, siloing us is their solution for previous siloing. And Safe Agile says they are, quote, empowering Agile teams to do their own lean UX. But they also mention that you should, quote, include the design perspectives of product management, system architecture, business owners, information security, operations, and shared services. End quote. Sounds like the agile team is going to do our work with everybody at the company except us. Oh, someone help me. It makes me think that someone at Safe Agile had some really bad breakup with someone in UX and wanted revenge. Now, this is the tip of the iceberg of some of the problems you might be having at your workplace. Our solution typically has been to evangelize CX and UX and what we do to everybody at our company. I see job descriptions that require CX evangelism. That tells me people at this company don't understand CX or UX. Good luck working here. No other role at your company spends time or effort evangelizing themselves the way we do. Developers aren't making PowerPoints to explain why it's important to hire qualified developers and let them write code. QA isn't holding meetings to teach everybody the importance of testing software. It's just us, and it makes us look weird and whiny. And it's not working. There are many things people don't want to be sold. A New Religion, Going Vegan, and the Value of CX and UX. So, I've been trying something new. For some slides, I'm going to talk about my journey and some things that I learned along the way. So, here's my story for a little bit. As I mentioned before, I'd been touring all of these developer conferences and agile conferences to do a presentation where I wanted people to really understand UX, who we are, why we're specialized, why we do what we do, and how we can fit into agile and how they can collaborate with us. And I wanted to see if I could write a program that didn't come off as evangelism, but would help them understand. Maybe I'm the only UX talk they've gone to at a conference that didn't try to teach them my job. So let me give you the super short version of some of the things that I talk about in that presentation so you can get an idea of what's in dev and UX. So, what is UX? I have this slide in Italian for fun, but it's my only slide in Italian, and it says, "What is UX?" And I walk them through a short version of user centered design so that they can understand three key things. We don't just draw boxes on a page, what we do takes time, and what we do takes expertise. I explained their current process is probably to build what a CEO or product manager wants, QA it, get it on a server, and wouldn't you know, that person sees it and changes their mind. Now you have to rebuild, retest, cycle, cycle, cycle. But if CX were correctly integrated, the process would look more like what's on the screen. And changes of mind can be okay since it's easier for us to change wireframes or prototypes and retest than to have developers keep rebuilding. I introduced them to my model, the Four Horsemen of Bad UX, registered trademark in America, me. And basically, they are frustration, confusion, disappointment, and distraction. Oops, I'm in my own way here. Distraction. And basically, I explain how we are looking for where these are appearing for our customers, either once something has been released or even while we are architecting and designing. We want to make sure people never feel these things. And I find it's a model that non UX people really latch onto and love. And I hear them saying, Four Horsemen of Bad UX, t shirts coming soon. I have a section on lean where I explain minimum viable product versus minimum valuable product, which we would rather have. And I remind people that the guy who wrote the lean startup says, what if we found ourselves building something nobody wanted? In that case, what did it matter if we did it on time and on budget? Nobody puts UX in the corner. So I remind people that in some versions of Agile, they haven't included us on the team, but we need to be on the team. There are so many areas where we can fit quite naturally into an Agile process, from that portfolio level where we are hopefully involved in killing ideas that have no customer value, all the way down to the team level where we are sprinting along with the Agile team, though we are some sprints ahead of them, and being a true partner and collaborator. And of course, I talk about how we can work into sprints, but that we must estimate our own time. Why do people who don't understand what we do keep estimating our time? That's always a disaster. And I tell them if your UX or CX team or practitioner is a bottleneck, you need to hire more and the right people, not expect us to train engineers to do their jobs, even though that's what a lot of Agile and Scrum books suggest. And finally, I say you can measure how things go before and after your CX revolution, because internally you might see things improve. Like, I bet developers will be able to estimate more accurately when they're working from great UX designs and prototypes versus guessing their time from stories or someone describing what we're building. And I close by reminding them that what they've been doing or tried in the past might not be CX or UX to a CX or UX expert. There are lots of non CX roles creating methodologies that mostly belittle, downplay, or remove us. And companies trying them are generally finding that doesn't work. It's time to try this again and get it right by correctly integrating qualified CX and UX practitioners and processes. and seen. That's the short version. You can see this at deltacx.com if you're curious about more. It's called Dev and UX. But I don't ask for empathy anywhere in my presentation. I also don't say design thinking. I also don't say, don't you care about real users? Many humans are low on empathy. If you're not sure, read some news coming out of America right now. And these humans typically don't have the self awareness to know they're low on empathy. So they're sure that they are compassionate, caring, understanding, and generous, even when we see otherwise. Oh, they commute with us when we were still commuting to jobs. They work with us. They comment on our social media posts. They're all over Facebook. And if there's one thing we should know by now, it's that we can't change those people. We can't create empathy or wake them up. The world would be very different right now if we could, which means step one, stop telling people who have low or no empathy to just have empathy. Unless they unless they decide to start a long, deliberate path of self improvement, they can't experience more empathy than the level they're at now. We need to have enough empathy to see who is low empathy and understand that being outraged that they don't seem to care about customers is not how we will appeal to them. For those people, we'll have metrics and ROI, which I'll talk about later. So my fresh angle is working. This was one of the pictures from the tour with a pretty tough audience, but this guy was getting it. But when I first gave these talks in late 2018, I got some negative feedback. My favorite one was not work related, just an advertisement. What? Uh, okay. I got another one that said, I walked out. It was raw UX evangelism and did nothing to explain how it fits with Agile. Notice the negative feedback I was getting are associated with a feeling of being sold something. A few even mentioned this is the same awful UX evangelism they suffer through at work. So I've since rewritten the program many times, and now it gets nearly 100% happy reviews. I'm not telling you that for my ego. I'm telling you that because I found that shifting what I said changed how it was received. Imagine that. When I've got 60 minutes or more with an audience or at a private corporate training for Dev and UX, I start with a live poll of what do you believe about UX? And all of the choices are negative, and I tell them they can choose more than one. So you can happily see people voting, I guess this hand, for things like UX is something anybody can do. UX isn't lean or agile. Now, my presentation ends up dispelling all of those myths, but it's a nice starting point because when I do the private training, here's the ending point. I say, give me some words or phrases that describe UX. And if you still believe what you voted for earlier today, then put that too. And it helps the audience see how far they've come. And it also shows me if anybody still thinks some negative things about UX. But you can see that just at the end of the same day, the responses are certainly much more positive without things being repeated from the earlier slides. So we have to take a look at how our actions, our words, and our choices as CX and UX practitioners or leaders can walk a new walk and send a stronger message than, Sister, please pray with me now. So let's talk a little bit about process and collaboration. Now that we've learned how I know or believe evangelism isn't working. What can we do instead? So I like to say you will go much farther being an important part of the team than you will by holding another meeting about how you should be an important part of the team. We spend so much time talking about empathy. Just put yourself in your customer's shoes, research people's experiences, design for them. And then we don't do that for our own teammates. We don't consider that most don't want to hear a UX evangelism presentation. We don't consider what they need from us, what their experience is, why their dissatisfaction with us can be so high. What's their job like when we disappear or don't communicate? Imagine you're that product manager, that developer, that QA engineer. What do they need from you? Well, don't imagine. Find out. We should be using our CX abilities to create a coworker experience that matches everybody's needs. That says needs. So people come up to me after my talks to complain that their CX and UX teammates disappear into a black box for weeks or months. They slap a final design on developers and are never heard from again. Sometimes engineers receive designs they can't build, and nobody collaborated with them earlier to talk about technical limitations and requirements. We have to stop doing that. Many CX workers are avoiding engineers probably because it can be no fun working with the people who sometimes think the least of us. But the best way to change that and improve that relationship is to keep showing up, keep being involved, collaborate, ask them questions early in the process, and show them the work as you go. Let's give our cross functional teammates all of the documents that are fit to be passed around outside of the UX team. Make sure they have personas and understand how they're used. Show them customer journey maps, your research, your customer feedback, your information architecture process. Not because you need their approval, but it'll help if they see that what you're really working on is not just drawing boxes on a page and sketching screens. Get tools in place, tools for communication, sharing concepts, sharing documentation, sharing designs and specs. Ask for tickets in Jira or GitHub or whatever they're using. Don't settle for a Trello board or spreadsheet of UX issues if everybody else is in Jira. You're on the team and you should be part of the communication and documentation system. Make engineering questions and issues a high priority. Teach them they can count on you to provide fast, thorough answers. When those tickets come in, I try to drop everything. I'm now their bottleneck. One might say I'm blocking the agile team. So I can't say, oh, I have a message from engineering. I'll just answer them tomorrow. No, no, no. The screen shows a QA lead tagged me on something, and I responded to him within 3 minutes. Now, I didn't have a solution, but I wanted to make sure he knew that I saw this and I was working on it, and I would get back to him soon enough. So I had some follow up questions, and that is going to do so much more than let me show you a PowerPoint on why I'm so great. Go to meetings. I know that doesn't sound exciting, but if we only show up to meetings to fight or evangelize, and we don't show up to bring positivity, help, improvement, discussion, and collaboration, then other people get a very one sided impression of CX and UX. Ask to be invited to the recurring and random team meetings. Go to as many of those as you can fit into your schedule. Work with management to improve how you're resourced and allocated so you can get to more meetings. I sometimes multitask. I'll show up to a meeting with my computer with work to do, back when we showed up to meetings, and I'll say, look, I'm kind of half here, I'm half listening, I've got some work to do, I'm half listening. If something comes up that's UX, I'm here. Interrupt me, get my attention, and let me help out because I'm here. Because I found that when I wasn't there, they were more likely to just make up their own UX decisions without me, and I didn't even know. So go to the meetings, even if you need to admit to them. You're half listening. I found that worked pretty well. And I asked myself how I wanted my non UX, non CX teammates to see me. And for them to see me that way, I have to be those things. So, thinking about engineering, though it's really for all of our teammates, I want them to think that Debbie listens to and considers their ideas. I've used Mural to hold an ideation workshop with engineering to get their ideas for the product. That's ideation in the sense of collecting ideas, not ideation in the sense of sketching solutions. Many gave good ideas, and I credited them by name where possible. Then they felt important and listened to. Debbie explains her ideas, designs, and decisions. Debbie collaborates early and often and doesn't blindside engineering later with finalized designs. Debbie is a fun person I like to talk to. She's approachable. I can send her a Slack message anytime and be confident it'll be a good conversation. Debbie has no ego. I can disagree or offer another idea, and she takes it seriously. It may not end up in the product, but I will take the idea seriously. Debbie makes engineering feel included. Debbie has made engineering see the importance of CX and UX by solving small and large things quickly so their work wasn't delayed. You know what tells these teammates these things better than another meeting about how great CX and UX are? When I am these things daily, hourly, consistently, when you tap into what your teammates need and you meet or exceed those expectations, just like we want to do for customers, you don't need to evangelize. They'll become your advocate. Let's talk a little bit about who we hire. I used to have a lot more slides here, but I've had to. No, this is the one with a lot of slides. The other section I had to cut. Okay, here we go. This is a job description from a Fortune 100 company for senior UX designer. And I had a recruiter reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I learned that this job was actually to be the team leader for a new mobile UX team that was going to fix the company's one-star app. Oh, thank you for making me a team leader with a senior title and less pay. But as you can see from the job description, they wanted at least 6 years of full user centered design, including research and testing. They also wanted high fidelity prototyping, meaning you must have the prototyping subspecialty and you either need to be a visual designer or good at pushing around a pre existing design system or component library. And I love the idea that while you're leading a mobile team fixing a completely broken app, you're going to have spare time because our work doesn't take long, right? Swallow your coffee because this job also requires that you be a professional illustrator, a subspecialty in the art world. Well, this goes way beyond purple unicorn. I learned that the hiring manager is a visual designer. Is that 100% bad all the time? No, of course not. There are visual designers who understand CX and UX and manage it well. But when that design manager doesn't get CX or UX and requires us to be experienced and talented artists, we're in trouble. We could be placing less qualified people into important jobs. I asked the recruiter if the hiring manager would consider getting everything he was asking for, minus the illustrator, since that's not totally relevant and someone else could do that. But the recruiter said no. The manager is an artist and expects everyone to be an artist. Okay, I'm not an illustrator, and I don't feel like I have to be. But I would have done a great job in that role if they had allowed artwork to be done by someone with the talent and the time to do artwork. So, why would a senior UX designer job, who is really a mobile UX team leader, go to a great illustrator? Let's talk about what I call the gate. The gate is that one quality, maybe two, that your job requires where it won't matter what else candidates might be good at. If they don't have this, the gate doesn't open for them. You need to be an illustrator. You need to have military clearance. There's nothing wrong with having a gate. It's okay to have standards, but I'm suggesting that we stop making art talent the gate for CX and UX jobs that aren't or don't have to be visual designer jobs. If you can't consider someone because they don't have the right security clearance, okay, that's a deal breaker. But we must stop excluding CX and UX specialists and talented people from these jobs because the gate is art school stuff like typography, color theory, branding, visual design, logos, and illustration. Last year, someone told me that they were rejected from a UX researcher job because they couldn't show a visual design portfolio. Your gate is broken. If we want to teach others at our company that CX and UX are unique specialties, we have to hire as if they're unique specialties. We can't just give a junior graphic designer some wireframing and expect others to see that CX is a formalized discipline for specialists. Sure looks like anybody can do this. And I've seen many workplaces thrilled to hire UX juniors, especially people right out of school, thinking they can throw a lot of work at them and pay them very little. More than anything, these juniors need mentoring and coaching. They need work reviews and help leveling up. They need help with soft skills like presentations, knowing when to pick battles, and how to wage small wars as a customer advocate. They need to learn the lawyer like skills we have developed. But what message do we send to our teammates and our leadership when we hire only or mostly juniors and entry level people and expect expert level work from them? Hey, you can do a UX job with no experience. We don't even need other people on the team. In which department do they hire one or two recent grads to do all of the specialized work? This is the section I cut down for time. So I'm talking to you, managers and leaders, or show this to your manager and leader. We need strong leadership. So here's a few bullet points for you, managers and leaders. Management needs to work with managers from product and project to make sure that CX is brought in during the earliest planning of features and stories. If we're not at the table from that first conversation, we'll all be surprised later when we're given junk projects that waste company time and money while building something we know the customer doesn't really want or need. Typically, I ask my room full of engineers when I'm doing my talks, hands up. How many of you knew this product you were coding was crap when you were coding it? Everybody raises their hands. We've got to collaborate early with portfolio, program, project, product, whatever you're calling it, to make sure we are headed for products that solve real problems for real customers. Management needs to work with leads from other departments to make sure they're letting CX and UX do our jobs. Agile Manifesto Principle number 5: build projects around motivated individuals, give them the environment and support they need, and trust them to get the job done. Wouldn't you love that to be the state of your job? Managers, please don't push people to be jacks of all trades or unicorns. Most unicorns aren't even unicorns. They're typically great at one thing, good at other things, okay at a couple of things, and not good or maybe even bad at other things. Why do we want someone who might not be great at something doing our mission critical work? I was once at a conference and a guy walked over to me, super smug, and he says, he was a manager of I think a UX team, and he goes, I'm making my artists learn to code. And I said, do your artists want to learn to code? He said, doesn't matter. Artists should know how to code. And I said, well, what does your engineering team think about the quality of the code being written by your artists? Is this saving anybody time? Are artists saving time? Is engineering saving time? Or are you creating more work for engineering because they have to troubleshoot the code that artists wrote? And he blinked at me a few times and he walked away. Let CX specialists do CX work. The days are busy enough. Play to people's specialties and strengths. I'm for people expanding their skills if they want to do that, but not because we gave them a surprise job description change, especially one that creeps into the territory of other specialists at our company. We hate when those teams try to creep into our specialties. Why do we do it to them? If you're working from a design system or you happen to be a great visual designer, it can be fast and easy to work in high fidelity. But please consider more medium fidelity work. It helps teammates see that CX architecture and design aren't visual design and that the two can be separated. We can work on the blueprints of the house before it gets its interior design. And if it doesn't test well, the time we spent on the visual design might have been semi wasted. Great visual design can't save poor UX and shouldn't mask it. I know some people disagree with my separations of visual design and other UX tasks, and that's okay. But since I'm a non artist with a degree in music, I see much clearer lines between visual design and other CX specialties and tasks. But if we in the CX industry don't draw more lines between visual design and other CX specialties, how can we expect others to make that separation when hiring for our jobs? Managers, inspire your teams to create more realistic interactive prototypes. I keep hearing that a click through model like you make it in Vision is enough, but I would disagree. Or I hear that the only realism you need is high fidelity and full visual design. Also disagree. Prototyping should bring concepts and designs to life in a realistic way. I design right into Acture, and I'm not paid to say that. I pay them. I don't use Sketch or Figma or Adobe XD or anything else. I go straight into Acture and I see if my ideas have legs because I can experience them realistically. Then engineering loves my prototype since it's better than getting a giant stack of documentation or annotated wireframes. If you're great at coding or you use another highly realistic prototyping tool, that's fine. Our screens, flows, error states, and possible outcomes have so much complexity now. What about accessibility? Clicking through a happy path just isn't enough when we do our work, when we socialize that work, or when we run user testing. User testing a prototype without realistic interactivity sounds flawed. Okay, so I cut it there. More on that if you want to know. Now, I want to talk about some things that might be a little controversial, but I know you guys aren't cheap. You are smart critical thinkers. You're going to put on your critical thinking hat. This is, if anyone watches my YouTube stuff, you know this is my critical thinking hat. You should always have it on, but make sure you have it on now. I'm going to take it off because it makes my hair flat, but you keep yours on. Time for critical thinking. Let's say I'm putting the band back together and we are going to be low ego action heroes. But lately, what happens at many of our companies instead? What ends up happening is often a design sprint or a team saying they will use design thinking. Hey, we can solve this in a week. We'll just do some exercises. Is it really being solved? And in a week? Design thinking. Do any two of us have the same definition of it? We know that design thinking is a meaningless term because of what it takes to get a certificate in it. You just have to know there are 5 steps and lots of fun group craft exercises. Nobody judged, tested, or assessed your ability to empathize, how completely you understood the problem and customers, if your ideas were viable or good, or if you prototyped well. Nobody judged, checked, or assessed your testing plan, discussion guide, participants, execution, or interpretation of the testing. Everybody gets a design thinking trophy and is often sure they can do our work. We don't get, oh, here's my check marks. Sorry. We don't guess or crowdsource the customer journey map or things like that based on imagining what customers might do or in group exercises. Our company and projects are too important to be left to guesses and assumptions. That's why I've been introducing my new model, which I'm calling Phases of Proficiency, because our work is about depth and quality. It's not about checking tasks off a list, regardless of how those tasks were done. It's about building a customer journey map because we interviewed and observed the customers. We know what their journey was. We are in that science and technique realm. We show our proficiency through science and technique. We can't just throw templates and group exercises at problems without care for the quality of this work. These tasks and tools are building blocks. Done without science, technique, and critical thinking, they are too often garbage. Design thinking has little to no depth, quality, science, or technique unless you define design thinking as being the same thing as all of human centered design. In which case, why aren't you saying human centered design? This was going around LinkedIn a year or two ago as the UX process in Portuguese. You can recognize this as the steps of design thinking, including a mini Olympics of possible technologies, user needs, and business objectives. From what I see people still posting on LinkedIn, more and more people appear to believe that if they get certified in design thinking, they do what we do. I saw one post saying design thinking is a framework that boils down designers and innovators' best traits so that anybody can use them. Just follow the framework, and you can do what the best designers do. Can your personal strengths be harnessed into a template that anybody can use, and boom, they've harvested and harnessed your best traits and abilities? Yes, people actually believe this. Let me ask you this. Is this your process? When you interviewed at your most recent job and they asked your approach to UX design or research or whatever your specialty is, did you tell them you do design thinking and first you create empathy? If I looked at your portfolio of work, is this the process that I would see? Why are we socializing, spreading, and training something we don't even do? When you're brought onto a new project at work, do you say, yep, time to switch into my design thinking mindset? Well, of course not. You have UX running through your blood, and there is no off switch. When I see job descriptions saying you will need to introduce or evangelize a design thinking process, I have to ask, what was this team already using? You would have to be doing something pretty terrible for design thinking to be an upgrade from that. And what the heck is this? You can't walk down one block of a street without seeing the four horsemen of bad UX popping up everywhere in real life services and digital interfaces. This is the don't walk sign in Tilburg, Netherlands. What does this mean? Don't pee in a burlap sack while waiting for the light to change? Do pee in a burlap sack? The four horsemen win this time. Not everybody defines design thinking the way it was defined 10 or more years ago, and it's still changing. No matter what it means today or tomorrow, you still do what you're doing. It's running through your blood, and I can't come up with a trend with users isn't just a UX concept. How applying design thinking to code refactoring can lead to a better software experience. My eyes are burning. The linked article says that before refactoring bad code, engineers should step one, empathize with the audience, step two, define the problem scope, step three, ideate on different solutions, step four, prototype, step five, test your code. What did engineers needing to refactor code do before someone told them to just use design thinking? I can't imagine saying this to developers and having them not punch me in the face. Here's something else from LinkedIn. A company proudly proclaimed that the elementary school kids they asked to imagine how they would live and get around on a newly discovered island where the best design thinkers around. Are these kids doing what we're doing? And of course, my favorite. How about this January 2020 article from Fortune magazine's newsletter called The Coronavirus Problem Could Be Solved with Design Thinking? The article had no proof or evidence that it could do this, but the author was sure that the entire country of China just needed more empathy and ideating. That jumps the shark. It's a picture of a guy. It's an American catchphrase. Google jump the shark after my talk. But it also exposes design thinking for how arrogant yet meaningless it too often is. It's bad enough that people think design thinking can replace a thorough UX process. Let's please not show up to other industries or world pandemics and tell them how to do their jobs. And if design thinking is this amazing, why hasn't coronavirus been solved? Get on it, design thinkers. Design sprints were originally invented and brought to life by Google and best known for Google using them. I guess I don't know if they were invented by Google, but they're best known for being used for Google venture startups. And the idea behind design sprints is that startups without CX or UX workers were going to have to do micro, pseudo UX work themselves and decide what they would build for their MVP. So, design sprints and the MVP are two startup concepts that can go well together for startups. They're not a great match for non startups. If you have CX or UX workers that know how to test concepts without coding them and releasing them to the public, then you don't need to do that, or your MVP is more in the UX phase. If you have a product team that knows how to prioritize and create a product roadmap, you kind of don't need to stab at guesses. And why are we modeling ourselves after startups, a segment of businesses that seem to fail like 90% of the time? Why don't we model ourselves after Disney Imagineering? So, design sprints are evolving and devolving fast. Version 1 of design sprints goes like this. I'll give you the short version. Monday, decide on the problem. Tuesday, sketch solutions. Wednesday, dis- vote and pick one you like. Thursday, create a high fidelity prototype, ooh, fully visually designed. Friday, test with real live humans. So that's the short, very short version of what happens in those 5 days, but it's usually a full 5 days for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people. But the interesting thing is that someone came out with version 2 of design sprints. Now, this doesn't replace version 1, it's just another version that you could do. And version 1 says we should really make design sprints shorter. Let's do this in 4 days. And instead of having the team and the attendees do all of the things together as group craft projects, let's have the team just prototype, sketch, and pick a winner. And then we'll tell everybody they don't have to stay anymore. It'll just be 2 days for them. And we'll take 2 days to have hopefully experts prototype and test and report back to everybody. So I'm thinking, that's interesting. They decided that not everybody in the room should be doing all of these tasks. Well, guess what? There exists Design Sprints version 3, which doesn't replace either of the other two. It's another variation you could use. And it turns out that some facilitators were arriving to do a design sprint and found out within hours that the problem, as expressed by the stakeholder, was garbage and torn to pieces. So they decided, okay, we'll do a 4 day design sprint. And what will happen is for weeks before the design sprint, the experts, the agency, we will do all of the problem work ahead of time. We will interview users, we'll make personas, we'll make the customer journey map. And that way, we don't get everybody in the room to guess at these things. Instead, on day one, we will present these things so people can understand the problem instead of stabbing at the problem. So I asked myself, then what's Design Sprints version 4 going to be? Because if we were to remove understand researching the problem from something the whole team does, and if we remove prototyping and testing, what's left for the whole cross-functional team to do? Looks like it's sketching and picking a winner. And I've seen some people say, ooh, do an even shorter design sprint and just have people sketching for an hour. So maybe today's 5 day design sprint will be tomorrow's 1 hour solution sketching workshop, which I still wouldn't want because you're doing my job. Want to also talk about lean UX. And by the way, over on my YouTube channel, I have entire live stream podcasts on design sprints, design thinking, and why lean UX is really terrible. So if you want to know more than these slides, because there's only one lean UX slide here, you can go check that out. So lean UX is probably one of the worst things that's happened to UX in a long time. Now, lean is fantastic, but lean UX is not. So let's unpack a couple of core problems that are wrong with the lean UX approach. Lean UX is trying to turn us into workshop facilitators. The authors claim they don't want work by committee, but their definition of collaboration means that everything we do is a team effort, done by committee, everywhere and always. In multiple places in the book, the authors clearly state that their definition of collaboration is that everything is done as a team. They don't want you to do any work alone, and the authors demand that you not give any work to any individual, even if they're highly specialized. Uh, no, they also say UX, so as I said, UX workers are basically reduced to team exercise facilitators. There's nothing we're allowed to do in lean UX ourselves without turning it into a team meeting or exercise. They even demand that specialized UX research and its interpretation be given to the team, as if everybody is great at interpreting scientific research. For something claiming to be lean, it's high on waste. If you thought you were in too many meetings before trying lean UX, look out. Since every task is done by committee, product managers, engineers, stakeholders, and others will be involved in what seems like multiple daily meetings and all kinds of team exercises. Because if I can't do my work myself without collaborating with someone else, then all day long I am calling for meetings with everybody else. In addition to wasted time, there's wasted documentation, which is surprising for a model claiming to reduce documentation. Meetings require people to read their ideas out loud so someone can write them on a sticky note on a wall. That sounds like a meeting none of us want to go to. Reading stuff out loud? Lean UX is a high waste, slow motion process. I've also noticed that it has an over reliance on what stakeholders want. It actually says in the book, quote, we found it helpful to begin with a problem statement. These statements are created by key stakeholders as they begin to address the strategic vision for the business, end quote. Well, we just learned from Design Sprints version 3 that starting with stakeholders describing the problem or what challenge we're here to address was considered the wrong way to go. If we want to be customer centric, then we must define problems from the perspectives we've collected from customers, not from a stakeholder looking at the business goals. These might not be aligned with or close to real customers' needs, habits, and likely actions. A stakeholder's vision is always considered, but shouldn't be the main source material. In lean UX, there's way too much time spent on guesses and assumptions rather than collecting or using great data. Many of the exercises in the book start and or end with collecting all of the assumptions everybody on the team has about the customer, the product, how testing went, or something else. This doesn't sound lean and runs completely against Six Sigma's desire to prioritize verifiable data over assumptions and guesswork. I can't find any reason to work from assumptions and guesses of teammates who might be low on empathy, high on bias or ego, or have a horse in the race. We must start with proper customer research. And bizarrely, the Lean UX book recommends nearly zero documentation because we were all in that meeting. That's not a direct quote, but since everything is done by committee, we were supposedly all in that meeting, and evidently everybody remembers exactly the same way how that meeting went, no matter how long ago it was. What about if people quit or get fired or don't remember? So it seems rather unprofessional to rely on human memories and us hopefully agreeing on those memories to avoid documenting it. Remember when you were a teenager and you thought you had to do some of the things the other kids were doing so they would like you, so you would be more popular or fit in? Maybe you made some bad choices hoping that people would accept and like you. We're seeing this all over again as adults. This time it looks like if you want to be one of the cool kids, you have to add design thinker to your LinkedIn or on your CV. You have to get certified to facilitate design sprints so you can watch other people do your job. You thought that going with the cool trend would make companies like you more or consider hiring you. You thought that you would be more understood or more highly respected if you said you do design thinking. But did people in other roles at your job understand you more than before? Did they understand and respect UX more? Or did they understand and respect you less because everybody's a design thinker? Or everybody can empathize, sketch solutions, and run quick tests on them. Aspirologies is my made up word for trendy methodologies that aspire to greatness but miss the mark or actually hurt our processes, teams, or product. Calling these methodologies is giving them too much credibility. Typically, they aim to reduce or reassign specialized CX and UX tasks and work to other roles or sometimes an entire team working by committee. Aspirologies often have ego based or emotional goals like non CX people at our company want to design solutions too. Well, I would like to help with the CI/CD pipeline or with the DevOps people, but let's be honest, nobody wants to let me anywhere near that. Teammates wanting to be involved in something doesn't mean they should be involved in something. It's like a new form of peer pressure, and that's why we need to burn this quickly to the ground. Work by committee, democratization, and team exercises and workshops are sold as great ways to do team building. Well, put on your critical thinking hat as I ask you this. If team building is best done by group exercises and workshops, where are all of the group exercises and workshops being run by marketing, product management, project management, scrum masters, developers, and QA testers? They all have work we could all sketch and brainstorm. Yet, how many of those workshops or exercises are being done at your company? Probably zero. That's because the excuse of team building is a lie. Because if this is how we built teams, we would do it in all areas and all domains at our company. Imagine you work with a developer. Every time they have an engineering task to get done, they want a team meeting including you. Doesn't matter if you're busy right now, this person follows a methodology that says that their dev work has to be done with other people joining in. Imagine they sometimes tell you that for this meeting, they're not going to write any code. They want all the meeting attendees to write some code as best as they can. What's your impression of this person and the methodology that they follow? Do you feel like you're doing great team building or holding up someone who's bad at their job? Does this sound like a strong, talented, and extremely competent developer? Do you trust this person to do their work well? Do they respect the time you need to work on your projects? Do you walk away feeling like you're doing their job with or for them, so why are they even here? Now remember that that person who's calling those meetings, group exercises, and design by committee sessions might be you. And when enough teammates meet aspirology fans over and over, maybe even at multiple jobs, what will they think CX or UX is? Will they respect us? Or will they wonder why companies keep hiring these people when we can all be design thinkers, run design sprints, and do their work without them? So, what can we do instead? I know it's been good to find some slice of what we do and get people to listen to it. We thought design thinking and design sprints would be the new form of evangelism. But if design thinking and design sprints aren't helping you get a budget to do 4 weeks of research that your project desperately needs, then I'm not sure design thinking's working for you. So, step one, what can we do? Get out of the building. A little bit harder in the pandemic. This may have to be done remotely, but gather your cross functional team, maybe even stakeholders, leadership, and executives, or higher, not higher than executives, but higher than leadership if you can. Have them observe customer interviews and field studies to better understand customers' realities. This has to be better than staying in the office and guessing at customers' experiences. Go watch our customers meet the Four Horsemen of bad CX. Another thing you can do is what I like to do. I use my own flavor of an ideation workshop, but it's not ideation the way design thinking defines ideation. It's a workshop to collect ideas from people, and it requires that each idea be written like a user story. That way, we keep people focused on customers and their real needs. There's no sketching in my ideation workshop, and it can certainly be done even remotely. If your company still insists on doing design sprints, After the design sprint is done, get all of the sketched solutions and move the best ideas through our user centered design process, whether or not they won the popular vote. I've seen some companies try to circumvent UX and try to push the winning design straight to product management or engineering to be released to customers. Make sure design ideas are given to you so that you can shepherd any idea with deep customer value. We don't hang ideas at our desk and ask teammates to come vote on the best one. We test with real and archetypal customers to determine the best executions of the best ideas. Don't let things happen in your domain by committee. Make sure that instead you are doing proper UX testing in scientific ways with real or target customers. Any team exercise or workshop that we do should have success criteria and KPIs and metrics. We should be calculating the costs of these workshops and their ROI, yet that never seems to happen. So, watch workshop outputs. What did they cost in the short and long term? Piles of people in a room for days. Plus, what did we pay for the space and food and facilitators? Those costs can really add up. What did these workshops produce, if anything? Why did they fail? Having success criteria and better calculating costs and ROI will shine a bright spotlight when the workshop declares outcomes that are emotional, like everybody enjoyed design thinking, or we had camaraderie and stakeholders felt involved. There are many, for that, I should set off my confetti. Hooray for you! There are so many less expensive and more productive ways to have results like that. And finally, one thing I strongly suggest to people, and I'm starting to get messages from people who've heard this talk and it kind of clicked for them, and this is what they're doing first: shift terms to what you really mean. Talk about CX, UX, user centered design, human centered design without evangelizing. Talk about your tasks and processes. Use the terms that we use. And if your teammates don't know those terms, teach them those terms. It's not jargon and lingo if people know what those terms are. So make sure they know what's personas, what's heuristics. You would love to know more about what engineers and other people are doing. Let's make sure they understand what we're doing and don't dumb it down. Every job at our company is complex. Don't water CX down. Shift away from terms that don't accurately capture or represent what we do. Okay, last handful of slides and then I'll take questions. Stakeholders and the business sometimes have low or no empathy for customers, which is why when we say customers are having problems, we don't instantly get time and money to fix everything. Our best bet is to tie our work and its outcomes to ROI and the achievement of business goals. But right now, we're just a staff job and it looks like we don't make the company money. People think we're just a pair of hands, we're order takers, we draw what the requirements say. So we need to change that. At many companies, I believe our new best friend is probably marketing. They have the business's ear and they have the business's wallets. They have mountains of goals that we can help them achieve. We'll partner with them on KPIs and metrics, and they will help us get some of the time, budget, and recognition that we need. Marketing will help us tie business successes to our work. We can also partner with marketing on work they often do now but shouldn't be doing alone, like designing, building, and maintaining the public website. We can also test copy, emails, and other marketing things so that the public sees the ones that are more likely to meet or exceed goals. Even if marketing wants to A B test, let's make B a better variant that's been vetted. We're going to make marketing look good, and they're going to make us look good. They will help tie CX to goal achievement and ROI. Some companies complain that CX and UX just aren't focused enough on business goals. They're not making stakeholders happy. They're too focused on customer needs and problems. Well, what's wrong with that? The alternative is building what people don't like or need, and how's that working for us? Why would we do that, even if it made someone's manager happy? Don't fall for the bullying and the peer pressure. Don't shift what you do to make stakeholders happier. But also, we shouldn't burn stakeholders at the stake. That's not why they're called stakeholders. Here's the real issue. Why doesn't our diagram look like this? Why aren't business goals and customer needs more aligned? Or why do they start aligned and end up on different planets once someone has overwritten the requirements? If you really want to be agile, then as you're collecting and interpreting customer feedback, you might have to rethink your product, features, and roadmap. Agile demands that once you learn you're building the wrong thing, you be agile and shift gears. If the business learns that we're not delivering what customers need, why isn't the business shifting gears and changing their goals? We can't make customers change what they need from us, what problems they hope we'll solve, and what tasks they need to accomplish. The business needs to be better aligned with what we hear and know from customers. And again, that's where CX and UX research will be hugely important. The more we're guessing, the more we're doing flawed research, or the more we're avoiding research, the less we know about our customers. We're risking a lot of time and money to guess when we can do proper research and know. We need partnerships like with marketing and some fresh allies who can help us push these transformations. We'll need to work more closely with business analysts so they can get out of the habit of overwriting the requirements and trying to turn us into order takers. So, quickly, let's just talk about some of the great ways that CX and UX can predict and proactively mitigate risk for businesses. The risk of building the wrong product, incredible internal and external costs of all of these things, the risk of burning engineering's time, budget, and resources, the risk of causing customers frustration, confusion, disappointment, and distraction, the Four Horsemen, the risk of burning money on customer support, social media managers, and others that calm and help customers. The risk that marketing is wasted and sales can't sell this. The risk of being reactive and slow instead of proactive and predictive. These risks are huge and expensive, and all of them can be mitigated by better customer experience. Strategize, research, plan, design, test, and implement better products, and you'll be winning. So, I'm not the only person out there saying these things. If enough of us speak up and act out on what's going wrong, we can hopefully push our boat in a new direction. Be very mindful of where you're silent and where you're speaking up. Speak up unemotionally and respectfully, as I find that makes people pay more attention. Though, of course, this presentation was not unemotional, it was emotional. Don't do that at work. So, for my almost last slide, I want to just tell you quickly that my book, Delta CX, I state that we've got 9 core principles to what we do. And I'm hoping you'll agree with these. Principle 1, our highest priority is customer satisfaction. Principle 2, quality over speed. Principle 3, don't get trendy, forget the buzzwords and the gurus. Principle 4, we're grounded in proper research. Principle 5, success relies on low ego action heroes. We need to correctly assess our candidates. Principle 6, collaboration with respect. Break down silos, but don't feel pressured by any methodology to give up your autonomy and work by committee. Collaboration and design by committee are not the same thing. Principle 7, play to people's strengths. It's okay to specialize. You don't have to pretzel yourself into being a unicorn. Most unicorns aren't even unicorns. Principle 8, customer touch points. Every interaction a customer has with your company adds to the story they tell themselves and others about your brand. We must deliberately architect all of these touch points. And number 9, the cambiata, which is Italian for changed. And I use it to mean that we strategically take the best path to achieve all of the above, even if that path is a little bit non-linear. Think critically and be a change agent. Go forth and be these things. Fight for them. Join the Delta CX adventures. And on that note, that is the end. I know that was a little on the long side, but thank you so much for hanging out with me for the hour. Please visit Delta CX to learn more about my adventures and some of the things that I do and offer. I hope to see you in my YouTube broadcasts, maybe my Slack workspace, Medium articles. Let's just connect. And with that, I will flip back to a tiny picture of myself.
Welcome. Welcome back to the tiny part. Yeah, you probably weren't able to hear my applause, but I think you really did well, and
Thank you.
it was a really great talk. Props to you. Would you like to have a small break, or you're ready to go to the QA session?
No, usually I stay until all questions are answered, even if it takes hours.
Brilliant. That's
Oh,
dedication.
and by the way, angry questions are okay too, because sometimes people disagree with me and have a question, and that's okay. So read those too.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I have to say that this final part of the presentation did actually answer a few of these questions that were posted, but still we're going to go through them just to, make
Sure.
people happy.
I'm
Uh,
not running out of time. Let's answer questions.
All right, so let's start with the first one. I think this one was connected to the part of the presentation where you were talking about how someone reached out to you on LinkedIn and they were expecting from you to do illustrations and stuff like that. So the question is basically how to break the stereotype that UX people have to be good at graphics design.
Yeah, that's tough, and that's something that I've started a fresh initiative on today. If you want to help with that, join my Slack workspace. We're talking about it there. I'm getting a whole bunch of people together from around the world, and we are going to build a training for HR recruiters and hiring managers. Will that solve all the problems? No. Will it improve some things? I sure hope so. I think that everything that we can do, remember, I think too many people are just sitting around going, well, that's all wrong. But speak up. Sometimes when I see these bad jobs, I will say to recruiters or hiring managers or HR people, this job looks like you don't totally understand the best ways for UX people to work at your company. And I've actually offered at times to rewrite job descriptions for free. Now, of course, you're thinking I should be paid for my work, and you should too. But I think the first thing we might have to do is some free work and some volunteering, especially when it's your friend's company. It's really easy when it's not your company because then you have to work there. But if you see your friend's company has a job posting up and it's ugly and messy, and you know that it's going to be set up for failure, or it's focusing too much on visual design but calling it UX, even contacting those people and saying, this looks like an interesting job, but you actually have the wrong title here. It looks like you want a senior visual designer.
Yeah, it all builds up from that empathy that you were talking about earlier in the talk.
Well, we have to speak up. Whether or not we feel empathy, we still have to speak up and get involved. If we wait for someone else to fix this, then you're waiting for me to fix this, and I can only do so much.
Yeah, indeed. Moving on, the next one was also connected to the early part of the UX process as well. And the question is, do you enforce any workshop-based methods to accelerate productivity or creativity or whatever? You did talk about ideation workshop, so I would definitely like to hear more
Yeah.
about.
Let me talk about that. So, I currently don't believe in most of the workshops that people are out there doing. So design sprints, design thinking, co-design. I'm against all of these. The type of workshop that I do is what I call an ideation workshop, but it's not design thinking's ideation. So I can get different people into the room or into the mural board if they're remote, and I start with every single piece of research that we have on our customers. So the personas we've already made, the customer journey maps, the research videos of people. So I really want people to understand the customers. And then eventually, and this is the short version, eventually I have people put the sticky notes on the mural board, because I do mural even in person, um, of just their ideas. So it doesn't have to be the exact execution of the idea. One of the problems with a lot of these workshops it expects people to draw the exact execution of the idea. That implies that people are comfortable sketching, that they're visual thinkers,
They don't make
that they know
mistakes.
the That what? That they don't make mistakes. That they know exactly how this should go. Because I could say, this is a guess, but I think customers would like big cups. Well, I don't exactly know how to make a big cup in a factory, but what if I just said, maybe people like big cups? And then I could go, oh, that's an interesting idea. We'll have to research that more and see if people want big cups and what it would cost to manufacture them. So remember, it's okay to accept things from teammates at the ideal level where it's still a little bit more general. And I make people write it in the form of a user story. So many of you are familiar with user stories, but user stories are in the format of as a certain type of customer or as a certain persona, I want or need this to accomplish a certain task. And that helps people be focused on the user, what the user and customer is likely to want based on all the research I just showed them or likely to need, because we know what tasks they're having to complete. Because I always like to do task analyses and say this type of customer has these tasks. So then we could say, okay, what are some ideas for ways that they could complete those tasks or steps in those tasks? You don't have to sketch what the screen looks like. You don't have to draw what checking into a hotel looks like. Just give me your general ideas. I'll take it from there. So, those are the main ones I do because my concern is that when we do these other types of workshops where we have other people drawing screens, we've pretty much taught them that UX work is easy to do. You don't need to do much research. You don't need to know too much. You just have to think about users, which sometimes is guess about users.
Yeah.
You just have to think about users and draw a solution. Then everybody votes on one, which is not what we do in our jobs. We don't have everyone voting on our ideas. We take them to user testing. So to me, everything is flawed, and but all of this came from methodologies that were used by startups that had no UX people. If you have no UX people, a design sprint is the closest you will get to fake UX.
Well put.
Thank you.
All right. So next one is also during the talk you mentioned that it's quite important for UX people to put tools and software into place. And which ones would you say are the must-have for UX people? And do you have any that you would like to recommend, but they're not so mainstream like the others? Like yeah,
Yeah, so there's obviously there's tools and software that we need to do our jobs, and then there's tools and software that we need to collaborate with other teammates. So um, certainly with engineers and product managers, usually I'm asking to be put into whatever software engineering uses for their tickets, and that product is using to prioritize what's in the backlog because UX populates the backlog. So I need access to put stuff in the backlog or at least to see what's going on. So if they're using Jira or GitHub or version 1 or a Kanban board or something else, you want to be part of that system. Don't have them make a separate system for UX now. We're getting siloed. So, first of all, make sure you are part of whatever systems and tools the team is using because you're on the team. Also for collaboration, I usually like some I guess I would say project management tools. I would say if for some of my projects, I like teamwork.com. But where I really have to get really, really granular, like making tickets kind of thing, like Jira-ish, I like a tool called Aha. I know that's a very silly name, but it's Aha. AHA.
Eureka.
Yes, AHA.io. Now, no companies pay me to recommend their tools, so sometimes my recommendations change because they're honest to who I like. But I like Aha a lot. It's difficult and ugly, and its integration with Jira when I tried it last year wasn't great. Maybe it's better this year, but I love Aha for kind of getting product and UX together at a strategic level and also at a tactical day to day work assigning people to tasks level.
Yeah.
Oh, and Zeppelin. Lots of people like Zeppelin.
Sorry, can
Um,
you
lo-
repeat?
Yeah, lots of people like Zeppelin, which is Zep like Peter, Lin, and
Hmm.
it's a tool that creates a bridge between visual designers and front end developers. And it allows all of the elements and components that visual designers make to have CSS classes and assets, so
Awesome.
that it's more of a collaboration and a library between visual designers and front end developers. And then, of course, I love Axure. I use Axure for
Yeah.
everything. Axure, not Azure. That's Microsoft Azure. That's a cloud. So Axure is my favorite. I pay them; they don't pay me.
Yeah, our lead PM is probably so happy now because he actually enforced using Extra for prototyping and stuff. So yeah,
Pew pew pew. Yeah,
uh,
that's awesome. Awesome choice. And I do extra training in case anybody wants to learn it and they don't know where to start. I've got 17 hours of videos, though they're not free.
brilliant. Um, Next one, just a few more, and then we'll have to
Sure,
let you off
I'll
to
do all of them.
go. Do you, I mean, this one is a bit more of a general one. Do you have a favorite UX book which we should read? But you can also like take the opportunity to promote your own book because I'm judging from your talks that I've seen is definitely a good one.
Oh, thanks. Well, hold on. Let me just slide over here and get my book out.
Yay!
This is my book. It's called Delta CX. It's long. It is the length of Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. So it's not for everybody. It's not a quick read. Um, there are not a lot of UX books that I love, but I also have to admit that there are not a lot of UX books that I take the time to read. Partially, I don't make a lot of time for reading. That's just a personal thing. Some people love reading. It's never been something I loved. I've read a few, of course. Everybody loves Don Norman's The Design of Everyday Things. Everybody loves Don't Make Me Think. But when I think about information, I feel like by the time I've written a book, it's outdated. Yeah, our ideas and information are moving so fast now, so that's why I have my YouTube channel, because if I just put out a book and I never added anything to it or said, "Oh wait, that idea has evolved," so to me, like, YouTube is my living book, and so I think some of I think that might be a better way for some people to get information, to be watching YouTube videos from people they trust, and maybe podcasts. Obviously, some podcasts suck, some YouTube videos suck. I hate when I see, how to become a UX designer with no qualifications.
In these three simple steps.
Yeah, you can't be anything with no qualifications. You can't be a plumber. You can't be anything. And the video is always how to get qualifications. So they undo their own clickbait.
Yeah, yeah.
So I am not a giant book person. I am more of a YouTube watcher. I don't know if you guys are YouTube watchers, but that's kind of
Definitely
where I
more
find mine.
into
Yeah.
podcasts and
And
videos
also,
and
yeah, and
courses.
so everything I do is archived on YouTube, and then the things that I call podcasts, I also push out through iTunes and Spotify right now. So they're audio only, and also I design what I'm doing to be mostly audio only. We've had 57 podcast episodes, and only two do I suggest people watch the video because it was just too visual. But even so, we try to describe things where people can't see them, and you can listen to me at 1.5x if your English is really good.
Nice. Moving on, I have to admit that I actually added this one, and I wanted to ask you whether you can tell us the story behind the Mary Poppins nickname. I mean, you did briefly, just in a sentence, but is there more to the story, or this is it?
A little bit. Yeah, a little bit. So I guess everybody knows Mary Poppins. And it started in 2014 when I was working at a company, and but I was remote, and I went to the headquarters to spend a week there, and then I was going to go home. And while I was there, I tried to teach everybody everything I could because I was at the principal level, which is like a lead. So I did all the mentoring and I was training people on Acture. And so while I was there for a week, I was like teaching everybody everything I could and fixing problems and trying to standardize work and help people. And and finally, it was Friday and it was time for me to leave and go. And as I was saying bye to everybody, one woman goes, "Bye, Mary Poppins." And I was like, "Oh," I think I cried. I was like, "Oh, that's incredibly sweet." And then the funny thing was I had a job. I ended up leaving that job later that year, and then I had a job like the next year where like I showed up and I fixed everything and I think I was working at an agency or something, and I just killed an agency project by myself like 6 months, like did an amazing job, very proud of it. And someone at the agency was like, "Wow, you're like Mary Poppins." Like you come in and you fix everything. But the joke is also that I have a degree in music and I'm a classically trained singer. So usually wherever I show up, I'm singing. And so that made it even more Mary Poppins because I appear, I fix things, I'm singing, and then I disappear.
Yeah, I can confirm that you were humming a bit before we even started with the talk. So yeah, I mean it's a sweet nickname to have as you have it. I was just interested in the
Yeah,
story
people
itself.
gave me the nickname. Yeah, it's not like I came up with that or a
Yeah,
marketing team came up with that. People started calling me that. And I said, well, that's pretty good. I think I'll use that. My last job, when I worked at Macy's, they actually called me Tenacious D. I don't know.
that's
You
Jack
might know
Black,
the
right?
word tenacious. Yeah, exactly. So there's a band called Tenacious D, but because my name is Debbie, and because I am tenacious,
Tenacious, yeah.
yeah, but because tenacious definitely fits me, my boss called me Tenacious D.
Also cool nickname.
Also
Um,
good.
also cool nickname, but if people go here, Tenacious D, they will figure out it's a bit more unorthodox, I should say.
What
um,
else do we have?
we have two more. Is where we can see you speaking next, and where can people follow you and your work?
Oh, good questions. Okay, the best place to follow me is probably LinkedIn and YouTube. So, go to LinkedIn and put in Debbie Levitt, and this face should pop up, but with this smile and more makeup. So follow me on LinkedIn. I post once or twice a day. I'm pretty active. Of course, my Slack channel. Hold on, let me see if I can run my equipment here a moment. Here you go.
Works.
Join my Slack channel at deltacx.link/join Slack. It's an open invitation. And please subscribe to the Delta CX YouTube channel. I've got a redirect you can use if you go to deltacx.tv, like television. You'll land
Mhm.
on the YouTube channel. And I go live 3 or 4 times a week every Tuesday at 6:30 Croatia time at night. I do office hours Ask Me Anything, and I take questions from people who have questions about UX, CX techniques, problems at work, conflicts, getting into UX. I just take questions live for an hour, so another good way to find me. So please subscribe on YouTube.
Yeah, that's about it. We managed to bring it all the way to the end. Yeah, I mean,
Was there one more?
yeah, those were the two combined.
Oh, two combined.
Where can people see you speaking next, and where they can
Oh, where
follow
can you
you on your
see?
work?
Yeah, I think my next talk is in later, other than YouTube 3 or 4 times a
Hmm.
week. I think my next official talk is where is it? Now I don't see it in my calendar, but I think I'm doing the Technical Agility Conference in India, which is now not in India and is online. And of course, I will be doing a short version of Dev and UX to tell all the Agile people how to work better with us.
All right, noted. Definitely noted. I don't know. I just have to say thank you first for taking the time
Thank you.
to deliver a talk to our community, and I'm sure they found it a bit useful, especially in the UX department that's still in the process of development. And yeah, shout outs
I
to
can
you, and
help
I
with
hope.
that.
And hopefully we'll get a chance to properly bring you here to split and enjoy the
Yes, let's
workshop.
tell people that. You and I have been planning for 8 months to have me come to Croatia and do a workshop live. And now we've had to postpone that. And I'm in Italy, so I can get there when it's safe to get there, but it might have to be next year. So I really hope that for everybody who joined today, I'll get to meet you hopefully next year at another adventure.
Appreciate it. Take care. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Three more.